Hello, brilliant and embodied souls. My name is Kim. Welcome back to my channel. I want to do a midwinter check-in with all of you and share some of the decks that have been really inspiring me during this season. We will take a look at the decks after a little bit of a catch-up. What's really been on my mind this season is resources. I mean external resources as well as internal resources. External resources are, of course, my network of support, my access to healthcare, my ability to obtain nutritious food. My material needs are my material mundane needs, being met, are my psychological needs being met. A lot of that has to do with those external resources. That all matters a lot, especially given the collective weather. I live in the United States. A lot of people are facing and questioning whether they are going to have access to some of those external resources, which is very scary. I'm not going to talk too much more about that collective weather and some of the fear that I'm certainly picking up on. I'm here to fight the good fight, which leads me to internal resources. Internal resources are those intangible qualities that make me, you, you. They are in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they are the aspirational, self-fulfillment types of qualities, ways of being that give us satisfaction in life, put us in touch with ecstasy and joy, empower us to move through some of the difficulties and the suffering we might experience when our external resources are being messed with. Internal resources, for this reason, relate to our ability to be resilient, relate to how we can live a more magical life, whatever that might mean for you. In the spirit of thinking about my internal resources and, of course, the folks that I work with, I've felt inspired or compelled to create a specific reading to help people identify their unique qualities, their unique strengths, and the internal resources that they have been gifted and granted by whatever's going on here. This reading is also about identifying what blocks us from utilizing our resources or even knowing them in the first place. And it's an exciting offering that I've had a lot of fun putting together. So if you resonate with any of what I'm sharing, check out my website. Link is in the description. I just feel we're going to have to tap into these internal qualities more and more in the coming months. That's my sense. That's already been the case for me personally and professionally. I've really been leaning into some of my own resources, which will be reflected in some of the decks that I would like to share with all of you. Let's move into those decks, shall we? The biggest focal area of this particular deck list is the Goddess of Love Tarot. I am late to the party on this deck. I picked it up this month, in part for Valentine's Day, as well as my growing interest in my Venusian resources. What do I mean here? My sensuality, my eroticism, my girly girl getting it on. That has been very resourcing to me. Let's look at some of the cards. I'm somebody who denied myself these resources because of internalized shame and guilt per my Catholic upbringing. This deck is helping me access my voluptuousness, my slowness, my sensuality, my luxurious zhuzh. I was not originally interested in this deck when it came out about a year ago because I was still working on, and you know, to be fair, I remain in a process with that internalized shame and guilt around my sexuality and sensuality. That's probably going to be a forever thing for me. Just being honest. But when this deck first came out, I just did not indulge myself in what other people were saying about this deck and what it was doing for them. I didn't really allow myself to consider what it could do for me. All of the pinks and reds did not speak to me. The style of collage wasn't quite resonating with me at the time. I like raw collage. There was just something about this particular collage style that didn't speak to me. It does now. I'm really digging the Pip-esque nature of the collage. I'm also really digging the goddesses that were chosen for the major arcana. The guidebook is so helpful for reclaiming sensuality, eroticism, coming into self-love, being fierce about those aspects of who we are. That's one of my internal resources. You know, my curiosity, most certainly my fierceness as well. I feel met in this deck's commitment to fiercely pursuing sensuality. That feels really nourishing to me at this point in time. Oh, it's so good. Oh, Lima wants to say hello. Okay, a partner in crime for this deck is the Mary Magdalene Oracle by Megan Watterson. Because of that internalized shame and guilt that I mentioned, I've wanted to reapproach and work through some of my issues, critiques, and trauma reactions regarding the Catholic Church. I got this deck about a year ago to begin that work. I've touched into it a little bit here and there as I've been resourced to do so. That type of work has required a lot of space and compassion for myself. I have not always had that space nor that compassion. However, more and more, I have self-forgiveness and the ability to forgive others coming online. Working with this deck has been really wonderful because of the author. I have Megan Watterson's book about her relationship with the Magdalene. That book, alongside this deck, has been so mirroring and resourcing to me. Megan, at least, as stated in that book, does not identify as Christian, nor do I. Other people, don't come for me. Like, people can do their own spiritual path. I'm not here to tell people what that should be. And yet it was really beautiful to see somebody who maybe has similar critiques and problems with Christianity as myself speak about her growing and deepening relationship with the Magdalene. The wisdom of both the Magdalene and Megan come through in this deck in profound healing messages. This deck tells me exactly what I need to hear with regards to a spiritual message to look at a given situation in a new and more elevated manner. This deck goes really, really well with the Goddess of Love Tarot, which maybe shouldn't be surprising, given this deck has a lot of reds and golds. But actually, like, thematically, there's a little bit of a contrast, but actually the contrast between these two decks met me right where I needed to be met. Another friend of the Goddess of Love Tarot is the Rose Oracle by Rebecca Campbell. This is the only deck by Rebecca Campbell I own. Many of her other decks did not speak to me due to the love and light, new age vantage point. This deck has some of that. But again, I don't own her other decks, so I can't really truthfully compare and contrast them. What I can say about the Rose Oracle is that it's really tapped into goddess lineage, again, maybe like Mother Mary, Magdalene, but also like Venusian and Aphrodite types of energies. Any goddess associated with the rose feels represented within this deck. It is gentle, kind, slow, soft, qualities that feel needed in my life right now. She goes well because of the pinks. She does go well with the Goddess of Love. But again, there's a little bit of a contrast, a different contrast than the Magdalene Oracle with the Goddess of Love. The main contrast between the Rose Oracle and the Goddess of Love is the Goddess of Love, again, has that fierceness, that empowered Like, I am here to be loved and give love, right? Get in line. It's got that energy. This deck has that more of a mother quality, soft, dare I say, demure. So actually the contrast between the two decks, you know, in terms of the messages, in terms of the aesthetic, is a nice foil. There's a little bit of a foil going on. But that foil actually delivers helpful messages. Okay, let's see, what is next? Let's talk a little bit about the Stone and Shadow Oracle. I did a in-depth review. Go check that out if this deck interests you. It is goth girl, romance goth, moody. It helps me move through the underworld. So times of despair, confusion, times of self-doubt. This deck is actually coming through as an excellent resource when I or somebody I'm reading for has a lot of self-doubt and is getting all turned around in their head about a given issue. This deck has wanted to come forward. I've actually been sitting in a lot of that energy myself lately, questioning my path, questioning, am I doing the right things for my own development? This deck has been a great companion as I have moved through that specific track of the underworld, you know, aka that self-doubt, that dark night of the soul kind of process. Similar to the Mary Magdalene Oracle, this deck is really, it's much better to hold the decks like this. Oh my God. Similar to the Mary Magdalene Oracle, this deck has been helping me work with integrating internalized shame and guilt related to my Catholic upbringing. There's a lot of cathedral, here's a great example, cathedral windows, cathedral architecture, lots of gravestones that have Christian iconography. That imagery has not been my thing at all. At all. Working with imagery like this is helping me address some of that internalized shame, internalized self-hatred. It has been an immense resource to myself and to others on a similar path. Its friend is the Mountain Dream Tarot. I spoke about the interaction of these two decks in my review. I've really struggled to find a buddy for the Mountain Dream. I love working with tarot and oracle together. So when a deck doesn't have a buddy, I tend to not reach for it. If you know of other decks that go really well with the Mountain Dream, please drop me a comment. I would love to know what you pair with this deck. It finally found a friend in the Stone and Shadow Oracle. This deck is like your aunt who tells the truth, does so in a very straight up, no nonsense way, while having a laugh with you, while sitting down and having a cup of tea, or you know, sharing a beer on the porch. This deck is very grounded, while also a touch whimsical. There is some whimsy in this deck. There is play within this deck. The people depicted in this deck are real people. The artist, you know, this is the very first photography deck ever. So these are photographs of real people. The artist's friends, family members, colleagues, neighbors participated in the creation of this deck. It feels very human connection driven, making it an ideal deck to examine family patterns, relationships, do work with one's ancestors. That's part of the reason I feel it gets along with the Stone and Shadow Oracle so well. Both decks are interested in examining like past times and how the past is showing up in the present, making it a potent pair. I'm looking forward to using this deck a lot more because it now has a friend. Its energy is, again, it feels like a family member. That's what it feels like. I did not grow up on the East Coast. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that the author made this deck while she was living in the Catskill Mountains. I could be wrong about that. I did not grow up on the East Coast, and yet there's just a very familial quality that this deck has for me. Okay, our final deck is the Circle of Doors Tarot. It is my most beloved deck. I use it every day in my daily draw practice. I ask, what door do I need to walk through? What door is going to support me given the energies of the other cards I lay out? The thing I want to say about this deck in this video is how well it goes with other decks. Because it is black and white, and very liminal. It has a lot of liminal energy, making it very adaptable and flexible. Those qualities mean it goes well with so many other decks, and depending on the decks around it, it will come alive in different kinds of ways. So if it's around a lot of cheerful decks, you will get cheer. You will see, it's almost like the deck has some of those cheerful qualities. You know, if it's moody, the Circle of Doors will present itself in that way. And I don't just mean, you know, the contents of the card. I mean, the Circle of Doors will take on some of the energy and feeling of the other cards. When I look at these cards, again, depending on what's around it, I will actually see colors, see different elements to the card because the photography is layered. I adore this deck for its adaptability. That's actually one of the resources I've really been tapping into lately, is noticing the ways that I am adaptable, flexible, how I can, I have deep roots, and yet I can weather really big storms because of those deep roots, because I have an ability to adapt with what's happening. My hope is in sharing some of the decks that I'm loving right now, in talking about them in terms of resources, in internal resources, that you will feel inspired to hone in on your resources. You too have resources that make you you. Knowing what some of those are can be a light that guides our way through suffering and difficulty. I anticipate the coming months to have more of that suffering and difficulty, making knowing our resources all the more important. That feels like a good place to end today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you are well, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.